So for 40 years, over 40 years, financial planning ministry, we're a 501c3 ministry, and this is all that we do. We help you with those estate planning documents. $2.5 billion in gift expectancies have been identified for ministries. You know, here at this church, I indicated I've been here 3 or 4 times doing this seminar. There's resources set aside someday for this church. You know, when an air conditioning unit goes out on a large facility like this, it doesn't cost, $3,000, $4,000 like a home air conditioner. You're looking at $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. So estate gifts and, future gifts will really help that. But again, you'll see there's over 8,000 ministries receiving something someday because of your generosities as Christians, our stewardship back to God. I start off, of course, I've talked a lot, but I start off the actual presentation with this question. Will your loved ones have to endure probate? Now, the word endure is not up there, but whenever you hear the word probate, you don't really kind of feel warm and fuzzy. And if you've ever gone through probate, and some people in my seminars have, or they say, I'm in that experience right now. If you have seen a family member or a friend go through it, it's not always a pleasant situation. And I even went through it, and I'll tell you some examples of that. But will they have to endure a probate scenario? And then it kind of goes into it, does it really matter if I have a lot or if I have a nibble? Okay, and I have some examples of that. Doesn't matter if you live in a mansion or a smaller home. Now this house, you're saying, okay, you're just showing some variables there, Phil, but my wife and I, we go to Haiti once a year. We have kids and grandkids that live there and serve there. And so if I would show this picture at the top to 99.9% of the Haitians, they would think the governor lives there or some billionaire lives there. It's something that is unattainable, really, in Haiti. And I could talk about Haiti the rest of the morning and the turmoil there, but that is unattainable. And it really doesn't matter if you own a red car or a green car. Now, here's my audience participation. Who in here ever owned a Ford Pinto? That's what it is on the bottom. Just one?
My brother did.
Huh?
My brother.
Okay, what color was his?
Yellow.
Yellow? Okay, orange?
They call it champagne, but it was kind of a light brown.
Ooh, champagne. Okay, that even sounds nice, okay? Well, you guys are lucky. I've heard of some with stripes on it and different colors. Mine was lima bean green. It was a very, very pale green. Now look at the shape of that car. What does it look like? It looks like a lima bean, doesn't it? So my friends, when it was my turn on the weekend to drive, they'd say, let's take the bean out this weekend. So I wasn't that lucky to have a nice colored vehicle. But it doesn't matter if you own 10,000 acres or if you have a garden out back, the same principle holds true. You can't take it with you. Okay. I didn't take this photo, but someone in their joking or their wisdom was pulling a U-Haul trailer with a hearse. And that's just visually, hopefully that sinks in. I have a lot of stuff. I have a home, I have cars, I might have a boat, I've got all this furniture, I have all this stuff, but it's not going to go with you. And that's what we're going to be talking about this morning is how can you make sure that your legacy is honored, that the stuff and the kids for guardianship go to the places that I want it to go to. And it's legal and it's locked and loaded. It can't be contested. I'm kind of giving you some of the points in my presentation early, but you can't take it with you. Here's another one that I really like. It's a father and a son, and the father's sitting there saying, "Someday, son, this will all be yours." It's like, oh, this is a present. But you see that the son. I love this part. You got to really look at comics. He has his hands on his hips and he's looking at it, and I just know he's thinking. He has the pickup in the foreground. You see, that's his pickup, and he's thinking, how many trips to the landfill is this going to take me? I mean, literally. So as Americans, it's only in America that we have $40,000 vehicles sitting on the driveway, and we have worthless stuff in our garages. So just keep that in mind. You came into the world with nothing, and you leave the world, and you can't take it with you. Okay? So let's focus on that. Now, this is where the notes actually start. So if you're a good note taker, start taking some notes. If you're not, sit next to someone who takes good notes and take their pamphlet thing home with you, okay? So as Americans, we think we should have unlimited options, don't we? Because we're blessed here, right? We're the land of opportunity. But when it comes to estate planning, it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or if you just make ends meet each month, you only have 3 options when planning your estate. And you'll see why, because the first option you have is having no plan whatsoever. And the legal term for this is called intestate succession. I promise you, that's the only legal term I'm going to use this morning or this afternoon, is intestate succession. It basically means you've left this earth and there was no legacy plan, there was no plan for your stuff or your kids. You know, I'm not trying to pick on you guys, but you know, you've got kids here, right? Side note, we have a cute baby back there who's almost a year old, right? My youngest attendee was 2 weeks old. I tell you, no one's beat that, I guess, but she was just holding this little cute little tiny baby. So the first option is doing nothing. And I never asked for a show of hands because probably most of you in this room currently do not have an estate plan. Some of you might already have an estate plan, which I'll be talking about the next 2 options, but I'm glad you're here because this is going to be a great opportunity. 60% of Americans currently have no plan. And there's various reasons why they don't. The next option that you have is to have a last will and testament. And that's something I think we're more familiar with. We've heard about it, on TV shows. You might have a last will and testament. Your parents might have had one, someone in your family, some friends. We've just heard the term last will and testament a lot more than this trust statement that I'm going to be saying in a little bit. But last will and testaments, they come in different forms. Back in the day, back in the Wild West, and even before that, you could actually handwrite your last will and testament, and it was good to go. But now with forgery, you could actually make money look better than the U.S. Treasury. I don't advise it because you will get free room and board somewhere, and it's not a place you really want to go. But with forgery, holographic last will and testaments really don't cut the mustard in a probate court. All last will and testaments are witnessed. That makes it a legal document. The what if statement, or I'll say the what if question several times, what if your witnesses are no longer alive? What if your witness or witnesses were bank tellers? I don't know if there's any bank tellers here or not, but bank tellers, they seem to sign like thousands and thousands of documents during their lifetime. They might not ever remember that they signed a document for you. And what if you asked me to be a witness, let's just say even a month ago? I probably wouldn't remember. Then it comes to the fact of, okay, this is a witness document, and even if they could find the witnesses, is this really the last will and testament? So there's some issues when it comes to a last will and testament. I talk to a lot of people, and they say, well, I'm one of those, that had a last will and testament. I can't even find it now. I have a lot of people say that. And then also have people say, well, that was before we had kids, and now we have grandchildren. So that's a great example of an outdated last will and testament. So that's about 30% of Americans have this document. The third option is the revocable living trust. And you can just tell, since it's bolded, that's really what I'm going to be talking about this afternoon. Because that, if you went to the doctor and you asked, hey, something's wrong with me, and the doctor said, well, I could give you good news, or I could give you the best news, or the best solution. Which one would you choose? You'd want the best. Hey, I'm paying you the same amount. I want the best treatment here. But a revocable living trust, my definition is a revocable living trust is a last will and testament on steroids. Okay? And I'm going to tell you all about the steroids here in the next few slides. But it's a great big step forward than just having a last will and testament. Now, unfortunately, it has the term trust in the name. And I would have named it something totally different, but that would have been thousands of years ago. Because trust kind of gets a bad rap. When you first hear the word trust, you think of who? Like J.P. Morgan. You hear of Rockefeller. You think of those ultra-affluent people that have kind of created these irrevocable, that means non-changeable trusts. They put money aside and kind of like a treasure chest, and they lock it. They can never touch that money again, But they do that so they don't have to pay some taxes on it, and they can get it here and there and everywhere to avoid things. But there's also charitable gift annuities and trusts that, as a Christian, is something you might consider. And I usually say later in life. Usually when a person is 65 or older, it's a great way to diversify your retirement. And let me just give you a quick example. A lady, this is about a month ago, she has got several charitable gift annuities with Central Christian College of the Bible. Well, this one she set up as a flexible deferred gift annuity, not to make you an expert CPAs or accountants, but what this means is she put a sum of money aside, and it was $25,000, and she immediately got I think it was $11,000 and some odd dollars tax deduction to use this year. So that's the immediate thing. But then she had it as a flexible deferred. So she's 73 years old right now, and so if she takes out at 74, it'll be an 8% rate for the rest of her life. Until she breathes her last, because she's a widow, she will be receiving 8 and some odd percent return on that investment. If she waits to age 80, she gets like 14 and some odd percent. So it's a really neat thing to consider, to diversify, because some of that lifetime income that comes back is tax-free. So how many of us would like to have tax-free income when we're in retirement? Yeah. So, it's a way to diversify. I always tell people, say you had a whole pie and you decided to carve off a piece. It sounds weird giving that piece away, but you're giving it away. You're seeing the benefits of that gift today, but you're receiving that lifetime income for the rest of your lives. And if you're a married couple or a couple, you could, married couple, you can do that as well. So that's to life, and you get an interest. So, but I really believe in that, because I have helped over 30 different families do that in the course of about the last 30 years. And it's just a wonderful opportunity. About 10% of Americans have a revocable living trust. And there's been various reasons why they haven't gone that route, and you're going to find out with these next few slides. But of these three options that every American has, which one do you think is subject to probate? I've answered it for you, because I pretty much answered it for you during our discussion. The first two will be subject to probate. If you do no plan, yeah, that's what probate's there for. If we didn't have probate, we'd really have chaos in our country, because whoever has the biggest muscles would get the stuff, right? And so probate has a logical order of who gets what, and it's the same if you were a billionaire, or again, if you ended the game of life with $100,000. It travels the same path. It's just all the same for anyone. What about a revocable living trust? Well, you're hoping the answer is no probate, and I'll tell you why. Okay? But first, what size of your estate would trigger probate? Okay, in your state. There's a federal probate law, but each and every state has a little different threshold. And in Iowa, it's $25,000. Okay, we don't live like California. I mean, when Aaron was here, he was talking about saving $1 million a year in interest. Whew, they live larger out there. Okay, but I'm so thankful they're reinvesting that $1 million in doing all those churches. But you can see the various things around the map, and you might look at Georgia and say, well, Phil, next time you do this presentation, you forgot to put some zeros there. No, that's real. The state of Georgia says if you have $1 to your estate, and to your name, I guess that's the phrase, then your estate would trigger a probate scenario. So so if you do anything from this seminar and you decide to retire and die, don't move to Georgia, because your kids are going to just hate you for it, okay, if you have no plan. Now also, and I always sometimes forget to do this, when I'm up in Iowa is one of only, I think, 4 states that has a state inheritance tax. So something to navigate around or whatever. So, and I don't have all the details here. I think it's 15,000. Anything over 15,000, there's a percentage. So I love Iowa. My family roots come from Iowa, but again, you might want to maybe live in a God's country like Missouri, where I do. So just kidding. So why do we want to avoid probate? And some of these are the same reasons why people haven't done a revocable living trust. Well, these aren't here. We want to avoid probate, and again, let me just key you in on this. You will avoid probate. If you're doing a revocable living trust or any estate plan, that means you've gone on to eternity. Okay, so you're going to avoid probate. Well, what about those you leave behind? If you have children, if you have brothers and sisters, if you're younger, and I've seen younger families, they're mom and dad, they want to avoid this probate scenario. So these are not taxes. I've already mentioned the word tax, but these are probate costs and attorney's fees, and they're real. When my mom passed away in 2013, she died intestate, had no plan whatsoever, so I served as her personal representative. $55,000 had to travel through the probate system. It was her house, car, and sale from the estate sale. In total, $55,000. That $55,000, at the very end, I wrote a check for $4,800, and it went to the attorney and went to probate court. So you could do the math, that's right at 8% or over 8%. So it's real. And that's money that, again, evaporates and goes to a place that you probably, if you had the decision today, you wouldn't want that, would you? If you could use the same amount and say, if my kids were still going to get 95% of my estate if I did nothing, but now I have this revocable living trust, why not still let my kids have 95%? But let's bless ministry. Let's bless the church here. Let's bless organizations like Central Christian College of the Bible. They're training, they're preparing for the future leaders of churches, and there's countless other ministries that you might have a passion for. But that is your great opportunity. The next thing that's negative about probate is it takes time. My mom's estate, the $55,000, it took 16 months from the beginning to the end. 16 months. There was no contesting. It was just my brother and myself, but it still took that long. And that statement, time is money. And I had to twiddle my thumbs for that long period of time. So that is just the average, and sometimes it's much more than that. I could give you example after example, but I won't go there, but I'll do one. There was a gentleman that was getting his estate done with a revocable living trust. Before he could do that, he needed to close out his father's estate. And it's in a small town in Missouri. I never give a lot of specifics, but it's northeast Missouri. There's a lot of towns there, so I'm not getting any attorney in trouble. But his dad died 4 years ago. And I said, why is this still open? He said, well, I don't know, And so quickly, I just wrote a letter, and to that attorney. I'm not an attorney. I just said, hey, what's holding this up? This needs to be closed. Then in a matter of a couple weeks, it was closed. He kept it open, and to me that's a crime, just to soak some more money from that estate. And the son, who is alone, he has no kids, no brothers and sisters, just really played along with the system. He didn't know really what he needed to do. So that's just one example, I guess, going on with this gentleman. From his parents, from inheritance, from everything else, he, before we talked in 2008, had a last will and testament. Good to go, right? He wanted to leave his estate to 3 ministries. A elementary Christian school, and I can mention Shiloh Christian Youth Home, and also Central Christian College of the Bible. I mean, he has no other heirs. He's not a grumpy guy, but he says, I have 2 different types of, relatives, distant relatives. Those who don't need it, and those who would just squander it. He's not a grumpy guy. He had a will, and the will was kind of done on onion skin. It was an old will. I could stand here and guarantee you today that would have been challenged, that would have been contested by some niece or nephew or whatever. They would have said, hey, I was fishing with, I'll just use a name, Bob, when I was 12, and he told me I was going to get everything. Those ministries would have not received anything, and this person has been blessed with an estate of over $4 million. But it wouldn't matter if he ended the game of life with $100,000. My aim is to help you to be the best steward to your families, and also ministry you have a passion for. It's your legacy, and that's what we're talking about. Estate assets are frozen. So as my mom's house sold, the car sold, the estate sale happened, I was required to put it into an estate account at a bank. Now that's a good thing, because you just don't want money walking off, but what if? What if I needed to do a $10,000 repair on mom's house to sell it, or to do this, or to do that? Fact is, my brother and I, we did run out of liquid money, but Dan and I had enough that we threw in a couple $1,000s into an account and we just kept things going, the utilities and everything else. But the estate assets are frozen during that probate period of time. You can't ask permission to the court to say, please let me have some to do this, and more than likely they'll probably approve that, but you have to go to court to get that approved. What about privacy? We live in middle America and we want our privacy. Don't touch my guns, and if you have daughters and your wife, don't touch my girls. It's just like, and then I'll start using my guns, right? So, sometimes I say, well, but really what's the big deal about privacy? I'm not a movie star. But again, it's the what if statement. So you've passed, your estate has gone through probate, that's public domain. Anyone can go to the public records, it's free, and they can actually get a copy of your probate records. And they could see, oh, they had over 20 rifles, and some of these were one of a kind, they were expensive. Or, oh, they actually had precious metals, and guess who got them? Their kids. I think they need to buy a Hummer or something, there's some scrupulous people out there. So privacy, I think, is very important just for us as common people. Let's boil it down to two choices. Started off with 3 options. Now we have 2 choices, either probate or no probate. Now, when I say no probate, here's 3 clarifiers. There's not a line in your notes, but there's 3 things that have to hold true. Your revocable living trust needs to be properly and legally prepared. It's not just something you're going to go home and write one up tonight and be done with it. You need to sign this document, and there's several documents. You need to sign them before a notary. That makes it a legal court document. Not just a legal document, it's a legal court document. And the third thing is, let's say if you have property, you have assets, you have bank accounts and retirement accounts, etc., those need to be tied to the trust in order for all that to flow effectively. Because if you leave something out, then there's another document with your documents called a pour-over will. That helps to catch those items if they need to go through probate, and it kind of directs it saying it's supposed to now go back into the trust. But you want to avoid probate whenever possible. So trusts, if done properly, if you've signed it before a notary, and you have your assets connected to it, will avoid probate. It will be less expensive for those you leave behind. There's no probate fees. There's no time. There's none of that other stuff that happens. Your successor trustee, which I'll talk about this person later, all he or she needs is your death certificate and a copy of your trust or the trust, and they can go to work. It's going to take less time. So in essence, if you own property, sometimes it takes till you sell the property or give the property or deed it over to an inheritor, but that might slow it up for a few months. But if there's no property involved, if it's just accounts and whatnot, you can actually really close an estate in a matter of a month. It can be that simple and that easy. Your successor trustees, they don't have to hire an attorney, they don't have to wait to get that appointment, they don't have to spend the money, etc. It preserves your privacy. I already said enough about that. No one needs to know what God blessed you with. And so that's very important. And a revocable living trust is just that. It's revocable. It's completely flexible. So again, don't think this is an irrevocable type of trust that you're putting money or stocks or something aside that you could never get back, but you're getting some return, either tax-free or interest or something like that. This is something that could be amended, revoked. You could even just say, I want to stop this trust and start up with a new trust or whatever. It's completely flexible. Here in Iowa and Missouri, I see this a lot. This is a shortcut that a lot of farmers have used, and it works to a degree. It's called joint ownership. Quick example, let's say, and my father-in-law, actually, his first farm that he bought, 40 acres, was $100 an acre. We used to be able to buy this good black dirt for $100 an acre, didn't we? And now, that same acre is worth $10,100, literally, if it's sold today. So let's just say grandfather owned this 1 acre. I like to keep simple math. And he put his granddaughter on it as a joint owner, and that works. Then grandfather died. That acre was worth $10,100. Well, the granddaughter says, I don't need an acre of land in Iowa. That's where my family used to live, but I live in New York City. I don't need that acre. She decides to sell, and she thinks she's going to have 3 months of rent with $10,000, and that's probably true. I'm going to have 3 months of rent out of this thing. But then she finds out she never really owned 50% of that acre, so she's going to have a capital gain exposure on that $5,000, you see. So there's issues there. It does, avoid a probate if it's inherited, but if the next person decides to sell it, then they have taxes there. Now this is on two ends of the continuum. So if you have kids, and I see several kids, and I commend that. I've had young couples come in that basically kind of just got married, and they say, we want to get things set up so that, all throughout our lives, we're able to amend this thing as we get blessed with children, or this happens, or this happens. But there's a big difference between court-imposed guardianship and court-approved. Okay. The court still has to be involved, but if you have an estate plan and say, I'd like to have so-and-so and their spouse be the guardians of my kids, and the probate court can see that. The court system can say, that's a good choice, let's do that. If you have no plan, then the court is going to impose it. They're going to see, they might not see inside the home, they might not see and really care if one of your siblings doesn't go to church, doesn't have a healthy lifestyle or anything else. They might say, well, they seem affluent, they've got a really nice house, and they live in a really good school system. Let's see if they want to be guardians. You see where I'm going? So court-imposed and court-approved guardianship are two different things. So for young families, this is really your primary reason for doing this. But me, and some of you, hey, I'm pulling you in here, we're older, right? I'm sorry, I'm looking at you because I know I can.
You look right at me.
And we're more concerned about our healthcare agent or our conservator. Because our bodies just don't last forever, do they? And we might get to the state of dementia or Alzheimer's, we might be in a coma, and we have end-of-life decisions. Well, you're able to have this healthcare directive that says, hey, I don't want to be on life support. Hey, relief from pain, this is what I want. And literally, it's a document you fill out on the pain relief. I put in there, no pain, give me drugs. I wrote that in there. You could do that. No, I don't want to feel any pain, just give it to me, okay? And so now, let's say a child is your healthcare agent. Now that child, and this is to me the most loving document, you could tell them till you're blue in the face, don't put me on life support, don't put me on life support, don't put me on life support. And that's verbal. But if you're in that situation, then that son or daughter then has to go in and they have to literally sign on the line to take you off life support. So it's kind of like their decision. It's something they're going to hold in their heart for a long time. Now, let's say you have a healthcare directive. Now, all of a sudden, they take this document that you filled out while you were alive saying, I don't want to be on life support. Again, I'm not saying you have to choose that, but most people do, I think. And I want relief from pain, et cetera, et cetera. Now, they take this to the emergency room and say, here's mom's wishes, here's dad's wishes. So now they're basically a glorified, I guess you'd say, post person, postman, post lady. They're taking the wishes. So that, to me, is a wonderful thing about putting together your estate plan. It's more than just your revocable living trust. It's your power of attorney documents, it's the healthcare directive documents, all these things that come together. Your successor trustee, there'll be quick distribution of the assets. Again, he or she, they just need your trust, and they need a death certificate, and they go to work. And sometimes the successor trustee will go to the very back page, and they'll see those specific things that are supposed to go to specific people. How many of us have heard of estates that have gone on, and all of a sudden, well, so-and-so was supposed to get the ring. So-and-so was supposed to get the guns, and then you say, well, where are they? They've walked off, unfortunately. And that's sad. Or, I guess maybe even worse, they've all been taken to Goodwill. Wait a minute, that was valuable. That shouldn't just be sold for $10 or something like that. So, quick distribution of assets, they're able to do that. They don't have to wait for probate court to say, now you can make that distribution, 2 years later. If you've been overly blessed, and if Steve would have given me like a blackboard or a whiteboard here, I would have done it all in caps. Because as Americans, we're all blessed greatly. But let's say you've inherited some money or some land, because land is greatly appreciated from your grandparents or from your parents. You might fall into a situation, and if you're married, you can have an AB trust. It's called a marital trust. Let me just go to the next slide here. And you can see with an AB or marital trust, you're able to double the federal exemption, basically, for estate taxes. So you can see today, it's really not an issue for 99% of Americans, basically. Because $12 million is a lot of money. But, again, for us here in Missouri and in Iowa, I mean, the price of land has really skyrocketed. So let's say you're getting close to that, then an AB trust might be the answer. And I say might, there's some specifics. There's a lot of positives in the sense of you have, up to $25 million that there would not trigger any taxes. But again, with the death of one, then it kind of restricts some of the stuff, but then there's still income coming back to the surviving spouse. I'm not going to go through all the details because, like I said, I'm not an attorney, but there's positives and negatives to this, but there's really more positives than negatives. But you can see it's really grown. I remember, and probably many of you remember back in the 80s and 90s, that families would actually inherit the family farm, but they had to sell part of it just to pay the taxes. I remember that. The fact is, I think, there was even this program, Farm Aid and everything else, because that was not real. That was not right. It was real. But then you can see they've really increased that level. So I've talked about the positives, the steroids of a revocable living trust, but still, what is this? Let me wrap my head around it. It's like that hearse and U-Haul trailer. You probably will never see a U-Haul trailer or a hearse the same way. You'll see one and you'll say, well, where's the other? I sometimes when school just starts, college, I always tell people, it's probably a college student that needed more space. And so they just borrowed a hearse and put all their stuff in the U-Haul trailer and they went to college. But hopefully there wasn't an extra box in the hearse that they unloaded, because they would be the talk of the dorm, I think. What's this? I don't know. So a trust, what is it similar to? Similar to a storage tote. Every single one of us has a storage tote, don't we? And I know this is an NYR church, and when we send our kids off to NYR, what do we send them off with? These totes, because they're waterproof. We don't send them in a suitcase. Whenever a student goes in a suitcase, we know, rookie, because that suitcase is going to be wet by the end of the week. But that's why we have storage totes, to protect our stuff, but it also helps us to organize our stuff. Okay? So I'm going to talk about a trust and a tote. I'm going to interchange the words just so we can kind of sink it into our heads. But just think of this revocable living trust being like a storage tote. So what's the first thing that you'd be doing? Well, if you're married, then you and your spouse will be the trustees. If you're single, then you're the trustee. You're the grantor trustee of this tote, of this trust. So let's just go back to that tote. You would get a permanent Sharpie marker, and you'd write on it, like mine, it says the Marley Family Living Trust, and has my wife and my name underneath it as trustees. That's a permanent ink, because that storage tote will never be anyone else's. That tote, that trust doesn't go down to my kids. That tote, that trust never becomes, the successor trustees. It's for you to have your stuff go on to ministries and to people, and after everything's all said and done, then that tote goes away. Okay? So it's not an irrevocable type of trust or anything else. It's used for estate planning purposes. You're going to name that successor trustee. Now this is also an ink, but this is inside your tote. This is protected. It won't get wet or whatever you want to call it. And so your successor trustee is that person that is legally charged to honor your legacy wishes. He or she kind of serves like an executor, but they don't have to be handheld by an attorney, through the long process and expensive process of probate. So they have the legal ability to use those two documents, your death certificate and your trust, and they can sell the house, they can go to the bank, they can bring in life insurance money, they can bring in or redirect the IRA money, etc. So that's the next person. Usually you have a successor trustee and usually an alternate, or maybe sometimes two alternates. Because life, what if you choose a brother and that brother predeceases you? You need to have someone as a backup. Again, for some of us older people, we need to have that conservator. We all need it. Us older people, we probably remember the Florida case, the Terry Schiavo case, many years ago. The husband, she was on life support for 5 years. She was in a coma. The husband knew that she did not want to be on life support. The parents, though, didn't want to let go of her. I mean, she was completely brain dead. So finally the courts ruled in favor of the husband, and she was off life support, 5 years. So as a young person, sometimes we never know. And I'm not here to scare anyone, but having a conservator is very important. You're gonna be able to name the guardian for your children. You're gonna say, here's the people I would like to raise my kids, God forbid if I can't do it. It's much better than having some guardianship imposed. It might be people you would have wanted, it might not be people that you would have wanted. Here's that U-Haul trailer and that hearse. I come back to it because your successor trustee will rent that U-Haul trailer, and more than likely for us, probably the largest U-Haul truck that is on the lot, and they're gonna start putting your things inside this U-Haul trailer. So just figuratively think of that. I mean, they're squeezing in the house, they're squeezing in the boats, all your bank accounts, etc. And then they open up your legacy plan, which is your revocable living trust. And they look at it and say, oh, they wanted to bless Rising Sun Church of Christ with a gift. And so they'll drive up here and they'll drop off a tub, a gift to the elders here, and to the administration here. Here's a gift. Oh, they also wanted to start a scholarship at Central Christian College of the Bible. They'll drive down to Moberly, Missouri, and they'll leave a tub there. They might leave a tub at a camp or whatever else. So all the gifts have been done, giving back to God. Then they're going to look at the legacy plan and say, oh, they had 2 kids and they wanted everything else, the residual, they call it, divided equally. So then they'll go to one house and take half the U-Haul trailer and say, here you go, here's your stuff. And they go to the other child and they say, here's the rest of your stuff. And then that U-Haul trailer is clean. If we've all rented them, right? And you can't return it with any dirt even. You're supposed to sweep it out or you get charged. And that is what's true here. 100% of what God blessed you with has to go somewhere, and you get to make that decision. Remember I said the 3 things for a revocable living trust to avoid probate, and one of them was connect your assets to your trust. So if it's real estate, you want to go ahead and retitle it into the name of the trust and you as trustees. And one of the questions I asked later is, do you lose any rights to that? Do you have to pay for more property taxes? And the answer is no, because you still own that house. Fact is, even in that process, you never lose ownership. When you sign that new quitclaim deed and re-record that, you're still owning that house. The beauty of it is upon your passing, and if you're married, your spouse is passing, the trust still owns that house. And so then your successor trustee honors your wishes. Let's say if it's a cabin and it's supposed to stay in the family, hey, I want it redeeded into my kids' names. Or it's someplace and saying, well, I just need it sold, and then distribute it evenly or whatever. So that's a beauty. When it comes to any type of accounts, sometimes you could connect it as a POD, that's called pay on death, payable on death, or a TOD, transfer on death. So your car titles, truck titles, and all that could be a TOD. I'm pretty sure up in Iowa. Yeah. I got Iowa now, Pat. Idaho, I talked to someone just the other day from Idaho, and Idaho doesn't do it. There's only 21 states that allow you to do a TOD on titles, which to me, that's a no-brainer. Every state should just let you do that. I don't know why, but Missouri and Iowa are 2 of them that let you do that. So anything that's titleable, that's the easiest and best way to connect it to your trust. So each time you buy and sell a car or truck or boat or trailer, you don't have to take your documents to prove that you're the trustee that owns the trust that now owns this trailer, okay? When it comes to IRAs, 401ks, anything in retirement or life insurance, if you're married, put the trust now as your secondary or contingent beneficiary, because that's the next in line. You want it to, remember your legacy plan is like a funnel. You want it to funnel through so your successor trustee, it's easy. It's easier for them. They've already had a loss. Why elongate the process? If you just keep people as your secondary beneficiary, that still works, but it's what if? Well, say you had 2 kids, and each of your 2 kids had kids, your grandkids. How many grandparents are in here? Okay, so this is a church, right? Even though we're in gymnasium, we're in the church. You have to be honest. Don't you just love your grandkids more than you ever loved your kids, right? Come on. Hey, let's be honest. Don't lie. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. But yes, we adore our grandkids, but what if? So one child is now gone, and you wanted his share to go to their children. Well, all the insurance company, all the 401k and IRAs, all they know is there's one beneficiary still alive, so all the money will go to that one surviving child. Now, you might say, well, there's no issue. My kids get along. I hate to say it, during a lot of estate processes, sometimes people don't get along. So that's one issue. And then if you had minor children, I'm sorry, I'm focusing on you guys. If you had your kids, which is very logical, you're saying, well, I want them to be my contingent beneficiaries. If something were to happen to you early in life, and they're still minors, that each and every company will hold on to that money, put it into a fund, and they charge every year to manage it, and then at age 18, they just dump it on the laps. What if you had a couple $1 million in life insurance? So with a trust, if you have minor children or even children aged in their 20s, you can have what's called a children's trust built into it. That's part of the revocable living trust. You say, as my kid, grows and goes through college or whatever, let them have access to it through a successor trustee. So let an adult kind of write the checks. At a certain age, like age 25, give them 50% of their inheritance because they've gone through the 18 through 22 dumb stage, right? And then at age 30, just give them the rest of the, by then they should be smart enough to manage, $500,000 or something. So some advantages to that. I went way long on that, but I have a wide variety of audience here today. So is this a new idea, the revocable living trust? And the answer is no. I already answered that it's been around for several thousand years. So it's not a new idea. It might be something new that you heard today. Does the transfer process of your home into the name of the trust and you as trustees, does it affect your property taxes? No. You still own that house. My wife and my house no longer is it just in our personal names. So if we both died, then that house, because it's a deeded asset, would go through probate. Now the trust still owns that property. And so that successor trustee then can sell it and then distribute it amongst our kids and our ministries. What about the distribution of personal items in my trust? I think I also even covered that. There's a page on the very back end of your trust that you can actually list those specific items. You might have a buddy that you fish with that your family don't even know he exists, and you want him to have the fishing equipment. You could write that in there. Whoever is preparing your legal documents, do they need to know my stuff, how much I have? And the answer is yes, because it helps in the whole process. It's all confidential, and whenever I'm talking to people on these appointments, I always say none of these values or these places will be listed within your documents. It just helps to know, hey, here's these various types of assets, and then you get helpful hints on here's the best way to connect this asset, and this asset. It allows you to also look at it and say, wow, my kids, if I died today, they would be $500,000 each. That's pretty good. Or sometimes you might say, well, I own a lot of land and everything. They don't need this much money, and I do want to honor God, so I want to, do this. My wife and I, we've created a fifth child. We had previous marriages, so she came into the relationship with 3 kids. I came in relationship with 1. So we have 4 human kids, but our 5th kid is our missions kid. And the 5th, 20% is divided in 5 different ways. That's just how we did it. And it's kind of neat because we're going to have enough inheritance because we're going to inherit a family farm. The kids don't need, 25%. 20% is going to be good enough for them. May I make changes in your trust after it's notarized? Yes. Remember, it's a revocable living trust. You could do amendments. You could do restatements of your trust all throughout your life as long as you could sign before notary. What if I'm single? Does it make sense? Yes. Because you are the grantor trustee. The next person that's going to be honoring your legacy wishes is the successor trustee. So it's very, very important. Side note, if you're married and one of you passes, your trust is still an active document because there's still a surviving trustee and the trust. It's just that, let's say the house is owned by both of you as trustees in the trust, then you would just need a death certificate if you decided to sell that house. It would be that simple. What about smaller estates? It's practical. Remember, my mom's estate, $55,000, triggered a probate scenario, cost $4,800, took 16 months. Yes, it's practical. What about out-of-state property? You're close enough to Missouri somewhat. You might have property down there, Let's just be extreme here. Let's just say you own property in all 50 states. Yeah, oh my, yeah. And it's all rental property. You'd have a headache, wouldn't you? But let's just say you own property in all 50 states. Well, here's the beauty of a revocable living trust. It doesn't matter which state they reside in because they're all within your tote. And your tote's right here in Iowa. So when that successor trustee needs to sell all those properties, they don't have to go through probate in all those different states that have different probate thresholds and different rules and regulations. They're able to sell it right out of that tote. So it's a beautiful, beautiful opportunity. What about your rights to your stuff? Well, then I should ask the question, is it really your stuff? No, it's really not your stuff, it's God's stuff. You have full access to everything that's in your tote. So what are the next steps? Well, we come back to those three options. And the first option is just doing it yourself. You know, we have LegalZoom out there, we have TurboTax, we have all these helpful things. You might be a do-it-yourselfer, and that's fine, that's an option. That's a pathway you could choose. If you do that, you'll probably just have a simple will. I have not really heard of any revocable living trusts that are offered that you do yourself, online. They're more complicated. But you can do that yourself and pay a fee. I think there's one out there that's $500 and some. But you might say, well, that's less expensive than what I would do if I went downtown. Speaking of going downtown, you could use a local professional, and that's a choice. That's an option for you. Just know you're going to be spending more money than if you just got a last will and testament, because it's more extensive, and that attorney might not see you again. Because if you don't do an amendment, there's no probate at the end. And so they will charge more for that. My theory is the taller the buildings, the more it costs. Again, out in Idaho and Oregon, I go out there a lot. They say, tell me where you could find a $4,000 revocable living trust. They say they start at $6,000 and $8,000 and go up from there. So we are part of the Christian Legal Society Financial Planning Ministry. So if you do want to work with someone in this area, we could say, here's some other attorneys that are part of the Christian Legal Society. It's just that we can't give other recommendations than that. Then you could also work with us. There's no fees, there's no sales, there's no cost for the 10th Amendment that you have, 20 years from now. It's completely no out-of-pocket cost for you. But we want you to be generous to God-honoring ministry. Like I said, be it here at the church, be it at the camp, be it at NYR, be it at Central Christian College of the Bible. That is what we do. And remember that $2.5 billion that's been identified to help ministry someday. That's going to be coming in the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, because we work with young people and we work with people my age and older, right? And older. I love, this is going to be good. You have to come to all my presentations. So that's your choices. What's next? Okay, so after this is your educational part. Kind of told you, hey, this is what is the difference between having no plan, having a will, having a trust, and all the benefits. Well, I'm going to have some appointments, and they're telephone appointments, and that's how we do it now, and it really works well. You're going to have an electronic planning guide that's going to be sent to you once you make an appointment. You're going to choose a day and a time that works best for you, and then I'll be calling you, and we both will see the planning guide. You'll have it in front of you, either on your computer screen or you'll print it out. I'll have it. And what I do is I look through it, I ask questions, you ask questions, and then after everything's good to go, I send it into the office. Then they will work on it from that point, and they will get you the legal documents. So I've set aside a couple days. Hopefully that's good for most people, but we could always make arrangements if need be. So you're going to complete that online planning guide. It's not that difficult, folks. I've heard it takes maybe 20 minutes, maybe a maximum of 40. And you could go so far, you could pause it, and you could even come back to it. So hey, guys, it's a good date night activity. Say, hey, honey, I've got something special planned for you. And let's work on this together over candlelight. It could work. Then you're going to meet with me on the phone, and like I said, I'm there to answer your questions. And every single person that I've talked to for an appointment, in person or on phone, there's always a question, and that's the best time to ask those questions. We're here to assist you. And then, even after that point, you have questions all throughout your life, you just call the office. They are so helpful. I just heard in a meeting a couple weeks ago, there's already been 18,000 phone calls to the office this year alone. And they're not complaining. They want to assist, because you're not a client, you're a member. And that's kind of funny. You're a member without any membership fees. It just doesn't get better than that. You will have your documents, all your legal documents, within about 60 days. And this is kind of a busy time, so we promise the latest you'll have is 90 days. We try to shoot for the 60 days from that telephone appointment that you'll actually have all your legal documents, an instruction guide, where you could sign before a notary and you can have your documents become legal documents at that point. And we do those updates for you upon request whenever you need one. Now, on the back of your note-taking, there's a QR code there, and this is the exact same QR code. So you don't have to make an appointment now. So you got various ways. From signing up, showing your attendance here, you will get an email, in which that email you'll be able to click a button and schedule an appointment. So you might have to take it home, talk to your spouse, or just look at your calendar, what's best for me, okay? You can scan that QR code inside that booklet that you're gonna take home, or you can scan it here. Some people know exactly, hey, I want the 8 o'clock, a meeting with Phil on this day. But that's the next process. And here's my email. I have some cards that are on the back table that have my cell phone number as well. So you've heard enough of me. I want to answer your questions. Again, I'll probably do 3, 4. I want to be mindful of your time. That's good for the general public. Then I'll be over here to the side to answer any specifics.
So let me just give you a second to think about your questions, maybe even write them down, but then also share with you what's next, okay? So Phil's gonna be here today and tomorrow, and we've already got some time slots that have been built in because of the information that you might have been hearing today, processing, trying to understand. You might still have some questions, and he wants to be available to you for those questions. That's a different meeting than what he's describing in October, in 2 weeks. That would be detailed questions, all right, I've got, how do I fill this out, sort of thing. The other thing is, since he's gonna be here tomorrow, and we haven't talked about this, so this is a curveball, he's coming to our men's breakfast in the morning. And then he's got another presentation, same time frame, noon, here, and he's gonna do the same thing again tomorrow. So you don't have to come to that meeting, but you might want to say, hey Phil, can I chat with you at 10 o'clock tomorrow, right? We do have, I think, a couple of time slots available today if you just need a clarifier. Does that make sense? So you can do that also. So, questions that you guys have?
Well, the one that I wrote down was, in looking at this sample here, anyway, where it said,
Retitling your assets, is that?
right here, where it says full legal name and then spouse's full legal name. Do you need to have 2 versions where those names are flipped, or just both having your names on there, whether one dies previous to the other, it doesn't matter?
Doesn't matter. And it's not all a man's world. If you could have the spouse, lady or guy, whatever, but it's like our house now is titled, is deeded to the Marley Family Living Trust, Philip R. Marley and Teresa L. Marley trustees. Okay. And then, of course, it goes down, the name of your trust even goes deeper, when it was signed and everything else, but that's what's going to be on your new deed, which avoids probate. So, and if you're single, you just have your name, the trust name and your name.
And on those, like redeeding and things like that, is that something you also help with, or you do? Okay.
Good question, yes. So part of the whole process is you provide us a copy of your warranty deed, that's the true ownership deed, and just a copy of your tax statement. It just kind of verifies that legal address. There's a little box that says legal description. You scan those, and you could attach them to this planning guide as an attachment, but sometimes people have issues with that, then you could always email that to the office, because there's no confidential information in it. If we have those 2 things, then we could legally create a new deed for you. And so in essence, we'll even send a slip of paper, because you might be in different counties, and they'll say, here's what it costs to re-record this document at, what county is this? Polk County, and let's say you're in Adair County and it's $24 there and it's $36 here. But we help you out and we give you the address, everything. So, good question.